The text message arrived with an innocuous buzz, a single vibration against the cool marble of my kitchen island. I glanced down, a smile already playing on my lips, expecting another excited message from one of my bridesmaids or a sweet check-in from my fiancé, Daniel. The air in my Miami apartment was thick with the scent of lilies and roses, a fragrant cloud of impending joy. Boxes of delicate, custom-made wedding favors were stacked in the corner, and the final seating chart, a testament to months of painstaking planning, was laid out on the dining table. Outside my floor-to-ceiling windows, Biscayne Bay glittered under the afternoon sun, a perfect, shimmering promise of the life that was about to begin. 2 days. In just 2 days, I would marry the love of my life. I picked up my phone, my smile faltering as I saw the message was from my mother. My heart gave a little flutter of anxiety, a conditioned response I'd spent years trying to unlearn. I swiped open the notification. The words were stark, typed in the cold, impersonal font of the messaging app. We won't be coming. We're touring South America with your aunt's family. You should not be in a wedding dress anyway. I stared at the text message on my phone, reading it 3 times before the words actually sank in. Each reading was like a separate blow. The first was confusion. A joke? A mistake? My mother's English wasn't perfect, but this seemed brutally clear. The second was a wave of cold, creeping dread. They weren't coming. My parents, my 2 brothers, my sister, my abuela, none of them. The final blow, the one that shattered the fragile composure I had built around myself, was the last sentence. You should not be in a wedding dress anyway. It was a casual, cruel twist of the knife, delivered with the chilling righteousness only my family could muster. The ground didn't just collapse beneath my feet, it had never been there at all. 2 days before my wedding. 2 days before the moment I had been planning and saving for over 2 years. My name is Emily Vargas. I'm 29 years old, a senior investment analyst at Sunspire Capital, and I had just discovered that my family had decided to abandon me on the most important day of my life. I stumbled out onto the balcony, the warm Miami air feeling suffocating. The city skyline, usually a source of comfort and pride, now seemed to mock me with its indifferent beauty. I had made this city my home 3 years ago, building a life from nothing. I had clients who trusted me with millions of dollars, colleagues who respected my expertise, and friends who had become my chosen family. But somehow, my blood family's rejection still had the power to cut deep, to reduce me to the little girl from Cartagena who was never quite good enough. The money. I sank into a patio chair, the thought hitting me with a fresh wave of nausea. I had spent nearly $30,000 to make this happen. $30,000 earned through grueling extra shifts, through every bonus I'd managed to secure, through every corner I'd cut in my own life. First-class tickets for my parents from Colombia, because my father had always dreamed of it. Tickets for my 2 brothers, Marco and Leo, and my sister, Sofia. And for my grandmother, my abuela, who had never left Bogotá in her 80 years, I had booked not only her flight but also a private translator to ensure she wouldn't miss a single moment of the ceremony. I had booked them all luxury hotel suites overlooking the bay, arranged for private transportation, and coordinated with the caterers for their specific dietary needs. All of it, every last detail, had gone toward making sure my family could be there when I married Daniel. And for what? For them to choose a last-minute tour of South America with my Aunt Carmen, a woman whose life revolved around social climbing and subtle family drama. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a statement. Daniel found me there 20 minutes later, his usually cheerful face immediately clouding with concern. He was carrying a bouquet of my favorite stargazy lilies, a pre-wedding surprise. When he saw my tear-streaked face and the phone clutched in my white-knuckled hand, he dropped the flowers on the table and rushed to my side. Emily? Amor, what happened? He asked, his voice immediately filled with the gentle warmth that had made me fall in love with him. I couldn't speak. I just handed him the phone. I watched his face as he read the message. His initial confusion mirrored my own, then his brow furrowed, and a dark anger I had rarely seen before settled in his eyes. He read it again, his jaw tightening. They are not serious, he said, his voice a low growl. He looked from the phone to me, his expression softening into one of pure fury on my behalf. After everything you've done for them? The tickets, the hotels. After all the money, all the effort? He pulled me into his arms, and I finally let out the sob I had been holding back. It's the last part, Daniel, I choked out. Why would she say that? He held me tighter. Because they are cruel, Emily. And because your father has never approved of me. He was right. My father, a man steeped in tradition and patriarchal pride, had never understood my choices. He never understood why I would leave Columbia to study finance in the United States, a field he considered unladylike. He never understood why I would build a career instead of finding a nice Colombian husband from a good family and settling down. And he certainly never understood why I would fall in love with Daniel, a brilliant, kind, and successful lawyer who happened to not be Colombian. To them, my wedding was a mistake I was making, not a celebration they should attend. Growing up in Cartagena, I had always been the daughter who tried too hard. While my siblings seemed to effortlessly meet my parents' expectations, I was constantly fighting to prove myself worthy of their approval. Marco became an engineer, and Leo a doctor, both respectable, stable professions. My sister, Sophia, married her high school sweetheart at 22 and immediately started having children. They all stayed close to home, building lives that made sense to my parents. I was the anomaly. The one who insisted on studying finance, who dreamed of working in international markets, who saved money to study English instead of planning a wedding. When I announced I was moving to the United States to pursue my career, my mother cried for 3 days. You're abandoning your family, she had said. You're choosing money over love. But I hadn't been choosing money over love. I had been choosing myself over their limitations. In Miami, I discovered I was capable of things I had never imagined. Within 2 years at Sunspire Capital, I had built a client portfolio worth over $50 million. I spoke at industry conferences, advised Fortune 500 companies on Latin American investments, and earned the respect of colleagues who saw my expertise, not my accent. Daniel had been one of those colleagues, initially. He was a senior partner at a prestigious law firm handling international corporate law. We met during a complex acquisition deal where his legal expertise and my financial analysis had to work in perfect harmony. He was brilliant, kind, and completely supportive of my ambitions. When he proposed last year, on a sailboat in the middle of the bay as the sun set, it felt like the universe finally made sense. My family's reaction had been predictably disappointing. During our video calls, they barely spoke to Daniel, despite his efforts to learn Spanish. My mother would ask pointed questions about his family background, his intentions, his ability to take care of me properly. My father would sit silent and disapproving, occasionally muttering comments about those Americans under his breath. The warning signs had been there all along. When I sent them the wedding invitation, my mother's first question was whether I was really sure about this. When I offered to pay for their travel, my father grudgingly accepted but made it clear he considered it a waste of money. My sister, Sophia, had been the only one who seemed genuinely excited, calling to ask about the dress and the venue. But even she hadn't called to warn me about their South American tour plans. They had all known, I realized now. They had all decided together that my wedding wasn't worth their time, and none of them had thought I deserved the courtesy of advance notice. The cruelty of that realization was almost worse than their absence would be. The night before my wedding, I sat in my apartment going through the final headcount with our wedding planner, Madison. So, we're confirming 93 guests, she said, checking her tablet, down from the original 105. Actually, make that 81, I said quietly, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. My family won't be attending. Madison looked up sharply, her professional veneer cracking for a moment to reveal genuine concern. Your family? But Emily, we had 12 seats reserved for them, including the special dietary requirements for your grandmother. I know, I tried to keep my voice steady. Something came up at the last minute. The lie felt necessary. I couldn't bear to explain the truth to someone I barely knew, couldn't handle the pity or the awkward condolences. Madison was professional enough not to press for details, but I saw the concern in her eyes as she adjusted the seating arrangements. After she left, Daniel and I sat on the couch in heavy silence. He had been furious when I told him about the text message, ready to call my parents directly and demand an explanation. But I had stopped him. What was the point? They had made their choice, and nothing he could say would change their minds or heal the wound they had opened. Maybe this is for the best, I said, surprised by my own words. Daniel turned to look at me. How can you say that? Think about it, I continued, the thoughts crystallizing as I spoke. Would we really want people there who disapprove of our marriage? Who think I'm making a mistake? Who couldn't even be bothered to tell me they weren't coming until 2 days before? He was quiet for a moment. You've been carrying their disapproval this whole time, haven't you? I nodded, a single tear tracing a path down my cheek. I kept hoping they would come around. That they would see how happy you make me, how good we are together. I took a shaky breath. But they've already decided who I should be, and it's not who I actually am. The realization was liberating and heartbreaking at the same time. I had spent years trying to bridge two worlds, my Colombian heritage and my American dreams, believing I could make my family understand. But they didn't want to understand. They wanted me to be someone else entirely. That night, I called my maid of honor, Jessica, who had become my closest friend since moving to Miami. When I told her what had happened, she was quiet for a long moment. Emily, she finally said, her voice firm. I need you to know something. Tomorrow is going to be the most beautiful day, surrounded by people who love and support you exactly as you are. Your family's loss is our gain. She was right. As I fell asleep that night, I realized I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was angry, but it was a clean, focused anger that felt like fuel rather than poison. Tomorrow, I would marry the man I loved, surrounded by the family I had chosen. And I would make sure everyone knew exactly how happy I was. The morning of my wedding dawned bright and clear, with the kind of perfect Miami weather that makes you believe in miracles. I woke up in my hotel suite at the Four Seasons, surrounded by my bridesmaids, who had insisted on staying with me the night before. Jessica was already awake, ordering room service and coordinating with the hair and makeup team. Today is about joy, she announced as she handed me coffee. Nothing else matters. She was right, but I couldn't shake the hollow feeling where my family's presence should have been. As I sat in the makeup chair, I kept glancing at my phone. Part of me still hoping for an apology text, an explanation, anything that would make sense of their abandonment. Nothing came. The venue was the Perez Art Museum Miami, overlooking Biscayne Bay. Daniel and I had chosen it because it represented everything we loved about our life here, modern, sophisticated, and uniquely Miami. As I arrived for the ceremony, I was struck by how beautiful everything looked. Madison had worked miracles with the flowers and lighting, and the space felt magical. But then I saw the empty section where my family should have been sitting. 12 empty chairs in the front rows, a glaring reminder of who wasn't there. I felt my composure wavering until Jessica appeared at my side. Look around, she whispered. Look at all the people who are here. And she was right. The venue was filled with colleagues from Sunspire Capital, including my boss, George Rodriguez, and several senior partners who had become mentors. There were clients I had worked with for years, professionals who had become friends. I saw faces from my graduate program, neighbors from my building, and Daniel's family, who had embraced me from the moment we met. Most surprisingly, I saw Anthony Rivera, a high-profile entrepreneur whose company I had helped take public 2 years earlier. He had become both a client and a friend, and his presence added an unexpected glamour to the event. Next to him sat Catalina Santos, a television personality whose investment portfolio I managed. I hadn't expected either of them to attend, but there they were, smiling and clearly excited to celebrate with us. As the music began and I walked down the aisle, something incredible happened. Instead of feeling the absence of my biological family, I felt surrounded by love from the family I had built. These people were here because they believed in Daniel and me, because they had watched our relationship grow and wanted to be part of our happiness. Daniel's face when he saw me made everything else fade away. His eyes filled with tears, and I knew that whatever pain my family's absence had caused, this moment was perfect. As we exchanged vows, I looked out at our guests and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. These people had shown up for us in a way my own blood relatives couldn't. The ceremony was beautiful, but the reception was where everything truly came alive. Anthony gave an unexpected toast about the importance of chosen family, and Catalina insisted on taking photos with everyone. The energy was infectious, and I found myself laughing and dancing in a way I hadn't expected to be able to. Around 9 p.m., as I was talking with some colleagues from work, my phone started buzzing with notifications. I ignored them at first, too caught up in the celebration to care about anything else. But Jessica grabbed my arm. "Emily, you need to see this," she said, showing me her own phone. "Catalina posted photos on Instagram, and they're already going viral. Look at the comments." I pulled out my phone and saw dozens of missed calls and text messages. Something was happening, but I was too happy to care what it was. "Emily, you have to see this," Jessica said, pulling me aside as the reception continued in full swing around us. She showed me her Instagram feed, where Catalina Santos had posted a series of photos from our wedding. The images were stunning, me laughing with Anthony Rivera, Daniel and me cutting the cake while surrounded by guests, group shots that captured the joy and elegance of the entire evening. But it was the captions that caught my attention. Catalina had written, "Celebrating the beautiful union of two incredible people tonight. Emily Vargas is not only a brilliant financial analyst but also one of the most genuine souls I know. Wishing you and Daniel a lifetime of happiness." The post had already garnered thousands of likes and hundreds of comments. People were asking who I was, commenting on how beautiful the wedding looked, and several business publications had already reached out to Catalina for more details about the event. "This is insane," I said, scrolling through the notifications. I had no idea she was going to post anything. "And look at this," Jessica continued, showing me another post from Anthony Rivera. He had shared a photo of himself, Daniel, and me with the caption, "Honored to celebrate these two amazing people tonight. Emily's expertise helped take our company public, and her friendship means even more. Here's to love and success." I felt a surge of pride and disbelief. These weren't just clients anymore, they were friends who were publicly celebrating our relationship and my professional accomplishments. The wedding that my family had dismissed as a mistake was being showcased to thousands of people as something beautiful and meaningful. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, but I decided to ignore them. This was my wedding night, and I wasn't going to let anything distract from the joy I was feeling. Daniel found me on the dance floor, spinning me around as our friends cheered. "Are you having fun?" he asked, his eyes bright with happiness. "The best time of my life," I said, and I meant it completely. As the evening wound down, our guests began to say their goodbyes. Anthony and Catalina both hugged me warmly, telling me how honored they were to be part of our celebration. "You deserve all the happiness in the world," Catalina whispered as she hugged me goodbye. Daniel and I retreated to our honeymoon suite around midnight, exhausted but euphoric. We sat on the balcony overlooking the bay, still in our wedding clothes, sharing a bottle of champagne and reflecting on the incredible day. "I can't believe how perfect everything was," Daniel said. "Did you see how happy everyone looked? Your speech during dinner had people in tears." I smiled, remembering the moment when I had stood up to thank our guests. I had spoken about chosen family, about the people who show up for you not because they have to but because they want to. Looking out at those faces, I had felt more supported than I ever had in my life. "I keep thinking about something Anthony said during his toast," I continued. That the best families are the ones you build yourself, not the ones you're born into. Daniel reached for my hand. Your family missed something extraordinary tonight. But honestly, I'm glad they weren't here. This felt like us, like our real life, I said, without any of the judgment or negativity. He was right. As difficult as their absence had been initially, I realized that my biological family's presence would have changed the entire energy of the evening. There would have been tension, disapproval, awkward moments that would have overshadowed the joy. Instead, we had celebrated with people who genuinely loved and supported us. The next morning, I woke up in the honeymoon suite with Daniel's arms around me and the Miami sunshine streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For a blissful moment, I felt nothing but contentment. Then I remembered the buzzing phone from the night before and reached over to check my messages. What I found made me sit up in shock. 47 missed calls, over 100 text messages, dozens of social media notifications. And they were all from my family in Colombia. Daniel, I said, shaking him gently awake. You need to see this. The messages had started around 10 p.m. the night before, just an hour after Catalina's Instagram post had gone live. The first one was from my sister. Emily? Why didn't you tell us who was going to be at your wedding? Then my mother, we saw the photos online. This is embarrassing for our family. Why did you not inform us about these important people? My father, you have made us look foolish. My brother Carlos, everyone in Cartagena is talking about the photos. You should have told us this was going to be such a big event. The messages grew increasingly frantic as the night progressed. Apparently, news of the wedding had spread quickly through their social circles in Colombia. Anthony Rivera was well known in Latin American business circles, and Catalina Santos was a celebrity throughout the Spanish-speaking world. My family's friends and neighbors had seen the posts and were asking why they hadn't attended their own daughter's wedding to such an important event. Look at this one, I said to Daniel, showing him a message from my Aunt Carmen, the same aunt whose South American tour had been more important than my wedding. She's asking if there's still time to fly to Miami to extend congratulations in person. Daniel read over my shoulder, his expression growing darker with each message. They're upset that they missed out on the social status, not that they hurt you. He was absolutely right. Not a single message contained an apology for abandoning me. Not one acknowledged the pain they had caused or expressed regret for missing my special day. They were all focused on how their absence had made them look bad in front of their community. My mother's latest message was particularly revealing. Emily, you have embarrassed us by not insisting we attend. People are asking why we were not there for such an important event. You should have explained better how significant this wedding would be. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Even now, they were trying to make their absence my fault. I was supposed to have convinced them harder, explained better, somehow forced them to care about my happiness. What are you going to do? Daniel asked gently. I looked at him, then at the messages, then out at the beautiful Miami morning. Something inside me felt incredibly clear and calm. Nothing, I said. Nothing? Nothing at all. I scrolled through my contacts and began blocking numbers. They made their choice when they decided a vacation was more important than their daughter's wedding. They don't get to change their minds now because they realized it might have been advantageous to attend. Daniel watched as I systematically blocked my parents, my siblings, my aunt, and every family member who had sent demanding messages. Are you sure about this? I nodded, feeling lighter with each blocked contact. I'm not their entertainment or their social climbing opportunity. I'm done being their disappointment. 3 hours after I had finished blocking my family's numbers, I did something that felt like the most natural decision in the world. I posted my own collection of wedding photos on Facebook. The album was carefully curated, 43 images that captured the pure joy and elegance of our celebration. There was a stunning photo of me in my dress, laughing with Catalina Santos and Anthony Rivera. Another showed Daniel and me cutting our cake while George Rodriguez, my boss, raised a toast in the background. The group shots were incredible, showing a room full of successful, happy people genuinely celebrating our love. But my favorite photo was one Jessica had taken during the reception. It showed me on the dance floor, arms raised in pure joy, surrounded by friends and colleagues who had become my chosen family. My face was radiant with happiness, completely free of the anxiety and approval-seeking that had defined so much of my relationship with my biological family. I wrote a simple caption, "The most perfect day with the most perfect people." So grateful for everyone who traveled near and far to celebrate with Daniel and me. This is what love looks like, being surrounded by people who choose to show up for your happiness. #chosen family is best #Miami wedding #grateful. Within minutes, the likes and comments started pouring in. Colleagues, friends, and acquaintances were congratulating us, commenting on how beautiful everything looked, and expressing amazement at the guest list. Several people mentioned seeing the photos shared by Anthony and Catalina, and the reach was expanding exponentially. I tagged all the significant guests, including Anthony Rivera and Catalina Santos, which amplified the visibility even more. The post was being shared by business contacts throughout Latin America and the United States. Then I set my phone aside and went to enjoy breakfast with my new husband, feeling completely at peace with my decision. By evening, the fallout had exceeded anything I could have imagined. Jessica called me while Daniel and I were having dinner at a beachfront restaurant, laughing as she filled me in on what was happening online. "Emily, you need to know what's going on in Cartagena," she said. "I have cousins there, and apparently your family's absence from your wedding is the talk of the entire social circle. The photos are everywhere. People are sharing them on WhatsApp, posting them on their own social media, asking how your parents could have missed their daughter's wedding to such an important event." The irony was perfect. My family had always been obsessed with appearances, with what their friends and neighbors thought of them. They had spent their lives building a reputation as a successful, close-knit family. Now that carefully constructed image was crumbling because everyone could see that they had prioritized a vacation over their daughter's wedding, a wedding that had clearly been a significant social event. "It gets better," Jessica continued. "Apparently, your Aunt Carmen is getting asked pointed questions about why she thought a tour group was more important than her niece's wedding. And people are doing the math on how much money you spent on tickets they didn't use." I felt a satisfaction that was both surprising and completely justified. For years, I had worried about disappointing them, about not living up to their expectations. Now, they were experiencing the consequences of their own choices. And it had nothing to do with me seeking revenge. Their absence from a publicly celebrated event spoke for itself. "How do you feel?" Jessica asked. "Free," I said, and I meant it completely. For the first time in my life, I feel completely free. The weight of their approval was gone, forever. And I could finally focus on the life I had built. 6 months later, I stood in my corner office at Sunspire Capital, looking out at Biscayne Bay and reflecting on how dramatically my life had changed. The success of our wedding had led to unexpected opportunities. 3 new high-profile clients had signed with me after seeing the photos and learning about my work. Anthony Rivera had recommended me to several colleagues, and Catalina Santos had featured me in an interview about successful Latina entrepreneurs. My family had made a few more attempts to contact me through mutual friends and distant relatives, but I had remained firm in my decision. They had taught me an invaluable lesson, that love should never be conditional on meeting someone else's expectations, and that the most important family is the one you choose to build. Daniel and I had settled into married life with the same joy and partnership that had defined our relationship from the beginning. We traveled, entertained friends, and continued building careers we were passionate about. Our home became a gathering place for the chosen family that had celebrated with us that perfect day in Miami. Sometimes people ask if I missed my biological family, if I regretted cutting ties so completely. The answer was always no. They had shown me exactly who they were and what I meant to them when they chose a vacation over my wedding. I had simply believed them and acted accordingly. Standing there in my office, successful and surrounded by people who truly supported me, I realized that their absence had been the greatest gift they could have given me. I had learned to value myself exactly as much as I deserved, and I would never again settle for less than complete acceptance and love. The revenge I had taken wasn't calculated or cruel. It was simply living my best life and letting the truth speak for itself.